Welcome for the fourth video. Nuclear weapon device designed to release energy in an explosive manner as a result of nuclear fission. Nuclear fusion, or a combination of the two processes. Fission weapons are commonly referred to as atomic bombs. Fusion weapons are also referred to as thermonuclear bombs or, more commonly, hydrogen bombs. They are usually defined as nuclear weapons, in which at least a portion of the energy is released by nuclear fusion. Nuclear weapons produce enormous explosive energy. Their significance may best be appreciated by the coining of the words kiloton and megaton to describe their blast energy in equivalent weights of the conventional chemical explosive TNT. For example, the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, in 1945, containing only about 64 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, released energy equaling about 15 kilotons of chemical explosive. That blast immediately produced a strong shock wave, enormous amounts of heat, and lethal ionizing radiation. Let's take a look at the most powerful nuclear weapons ever detonated, specifically explosions that exceeded 10 megatons. All of these behemoth blasts are many times more powerful than those that were used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II. On October 30, 1961, the Soviet Union dropped the most powerful nuclear weapon ever exploded on the archipelago of Novaya Zemlya, north of the Arctic Circle. Yielding an explosion of 50 megatons, the Tsar Bomba, as it is sometimes called, was about 3,300 times more powerful than the 15 kilotons nuclear weapon dropped on Hiroshima. The hydrogen bomb, designated as the Soviet RDS-220, was also dubbed Big Ivan and Vanya, though Tsar Bomba is its most popular monarch. Ironically, the bomb could have been much more powerful. It was designed to have an explosive yield of up to 100 megatons, but it was detonated at 50 megatons. The fireball from the explosion was nearly 6 miles in diameter, which is large enough to include the entire urban core of Washington or San Francisco, or all of Midtown and downtown Manhattan. On December 24, 1962, the Soviet Union dropped a rather unpleasant Christmas present over the test site on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago, which holds the second largest glacier complex in the Arctic, according to a paper published in 2021 in the journal Nature. At 24.2 megatons, this nuclear bomb was less than half as powerful as the Tsar Bomba bomb, but was still the second most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated. It also about 1,600 times stronger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Because it was the second most powerful nuclear weapon, it didn't get a catchy nickname like the Tsar Bomba did. It is simply referred to as Test 219. S-219 would be one of the last nuclear bombs dropped from the air by the Soviet Union, as a test ban treaty in 1963 banned above-ground testing, and future tests were conducted underground. On August 5, 1962, the Soviet Union dropped a 21.1 megaton over the Novaya Zemlya archipelago, the third most powerful nuclear detonation in history. It is simply known as Test 147, began not acquiring a nickname like the Tsar Bomba did. This bomb clocks in as being about 1,400 times as powerful as the one dropped on Hiroshima. Despite its immense power, this nuclear detonation is not as well known as others on this list. According to the Nuclear, a nuclear weapon like this that was airburst over Central Park in New York City would produce a fireball that would cover all of the park and produce an intense wave of thermal radiation that would cover all of the city and reach as far away as Stamford, New York. On September 25, 1962, the Soviet Union dropped a 19.1 megaton nuke over the Novaya Zemlya archipelago, the fourth most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated. It is about 1,270 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb, known simply as Test 173. This bomb never got a nickname. An interesting note. A few weeks after this bomb was dropped, the Cuban Missile Crisis began, a crisis that brought the Soviet Union and United States to the brink of nuclear war. During the crisis, the Soviet Union deployed nuclear missiles to Cuba. President Kennedy considered attacking the sites and ultimately ordered a naval blockade to prevent more nuclear weapons from reaching Cuba. The Soviet Union eventually agreed to take down the missiles in exchange for the United States removing their nuclear missiles from Turkey. On March 1, 1954, the United States detonated a 15-megaton nuclear weapon on the Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands in a test codenamed Castle Bravo. It was detonated on the surface rather than being dropped by air and is the fifth most powerful nuclear weapon detonation in history. The yield was about 2.5 times greater than expected and resulted in nuclear fallout spreading for about 7,000 square miles across the Pacific, leaving residents of the Marshall Islands, US military personnel and the crew of a Japanese fishing trawler exposed to a high level of radiation. According to an article published in 2017 by the Atomic Heritage Foundation, some residents had to be evacuated and the people of the Marshall Islands suffered an elevated rate of cancer. The Castle Bravo test and the harm done to the residents triggered global protests against the testing of nuclear bombs. In future decades, the US government paid compensation to island residents. Retired US military personnel launched a case against the government in 1984, alleging that the American government had downplayed the radiation danger. On May 5, 1954, another nuclear weapon was detonated on a barge beside the Bikini Atoll. The Castle Yankee test resulted in a yield of 13.5 megatons. It is the sixth most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated in history, being about 900 times more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima. In the years that followed, global pressure would mount for a ban on nuclear tests to come into place. The Bikini Atoll is a coral reef that surrounds a lagoon. Prior to nuclear testing, people lived on the atoll. The population was removed before the tests and has never been able to return because the atoll is still contaminated with remains from the radioactive fallout. On October 23, 1961, the Soviet Union dropped a 12.5 megaton bomb on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago, about 830 times as powerful as the Hiroshima bomb. It is the seventh most powerful nuclear weapon detonated in history. Known as Test 123, it was a prelude to the Tsar Bomba, which would be dropped in the same area just a week later. According to an article published in 1996 in the journal Polar Geography, this archipelago had small populations of people living there prior to nuclear testing. These people engaged in hunting and trapping. On March 26, 1954, a nuclear weapon was detonated on a barge off the Bikini Atoll. It yielded an 11 megaton nuclear explosion that was about 730 times as powerful as the Hiroshima bomb. Codenamed Castle Romeo, the test was carried out just a few weeks after the Castle Bravo test that had spread radioactive fallout across the Marshall Islands. According to Nuclear, a nuclear weapon of this intensity airburst over New York City Central Park would produce a fireball that would cover the park and a wave of intense thermal radiation that would extend as far as Port Chester. On November 1, 1952, Ivy Mike, or Mike, would become the first thermonuclear weapon to be fully detonated, yielding a 10.4 megaton explosion, about 690 times the size of the Hiroshima bomb. It was detonated on the surface of the Inuitak Atoll on the Marshall Islands. At the time it was detonated, the Korean War was raging and a nuclear arms race had developed between the United States and Soviet Union. Whether to develop the hydrogen bomb was a subject of debate within the Truman administration, with some officials pushing against it and others pushing for it, an article on the Atomic Heritage Foundation website noted, but President Truman ultimately deciding to build it.